Jason, my understanding is that your mother is a big fan of today's guest.
She is.
How did you first hear about today's guest, Mr. Sean Stephenson?
I heard about him. She had shared multiple videos of him just giving encouragement to people on Facebook years ago.
Well, your mother is super wise because today's guest is a larger-than-life speaker who's endorsed by Jimmy Kimmel. Jason, have you ever heard of Jimmy Kimmel?
He sounds familiar.
Well, check this out. Today's guest, Sean Stephenson, is actually endorsed by President Bill Clinton.
Whoa.
Jason, are you familiar with President Bill Clinton?
The saxophone player, yeah.
Correct. Today's guest is actually endorsed by the management guru, Ken Blanchard, and the iconic motivational speaker, Tony Robbins. Sean Stephenson was born with brittle bone disease, which means that his bones are falling apart over time. In fact, before the age of 18, he had over 200 bone fractures. However, despite the adversity that he faces on a day-to-day basis, Sean Stephenson has gone on to become a best-selling author, a leading motivational speaker, and I can think of nobody on the planet more qualified than to give today's presentation about how to get over your addiction to pity. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Sean Stephenson.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Dr. Z, I am honored to have on today's show an incredible guest.
I'm excited.
Sean Stephenson, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me.
Hey, today's topic, we're going to talk today about how to get over your addiction to pity. And I've always considered myself to be a pretty resilient person. I feel like I've pushed through a lot of adversity. And then I stumbled upon your story, and I just have to say, in comparison to what you've gone through, I got nothing. So I'd love if you could share with the listeners a little bit about your background for people who are not as familiar with your background as I have become.
Sure, absolutely. So what I think you're referencing that might be of value for everybody to know is that I'm about 3 feet tall. I'm in a wheelchair. I have a rare bone disorder that I was born with called osteogenesis imperfecta. And when I was born, the doctors told my parents that I wasn't going to live the first 24 hours of my life. But I'm happy to report that 39 years later, all those doctors are dead and I'm still here. So it's been a wild ride growing up in my container, taking on the challenges of life. And, I've really reverse engineered a lot of what it takes to not be addicted to that self-pity, as you had mentioned. And we're going to get into that in hopefully some depth today, because self-pity is something that we are all capable of using, utilizing, and having it just take our dreams away from us. And so I'm just pleased to be on this program and happy to share some in-depth knowledge, hopefully that helps the listener here.
Well, what I wanted to do on today's show is I want to spend 95% of this interview teaching people how to overcome self-pity. And I want to take 5% of it to provide the right background so everybody truly knows what you've gone through. I believe that I have read that you have had over 200 bone fractures before the age of 18, and that you actually broke your collarbone from sneezing. Is this correct?
Yeah, it's actually a little more in-depth than that. So, like I said, this rare disorder that I have is called osteogenesis imperfecta, and it causes the bones to be very fragile. So, as you mentioned, over 200 fractures by the age of 18, and it was a very common occurrence to break bones from sneezing, coughing. I broke my collarbone one time just vomiting when I had the flu. Multiple fractures from putting on a jacket or a pair of pants too quickly would snap the legs or the arms. Hitting a bump too hard growing up in my wheelchair would break a few bones. And so it was a childhood filled with a lot of physical pain. And that's why I became so fascinated with studying the mind and how do we live in containers and lives that are filled with pain and not allow that to just keep us down and not play a big life. So that's where I really got into it professionally. I became a professional speaker when I was an early teenager, and then about 10 years into my speaking career, I had a young lady come up to me from my audience. She rolled her sleeves up, and she had cuts all up and down her arms. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Why do I do this to myself?" Now, I had no clue. I was a young kid in my early 20s, and I said, "Sweetie, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out." And that's when I went back to school and became a professional listener, also known as a therapist, to understand the human psyche and how do we all navigate our own pain. Because whether we like to admit to it or not, we all have insecurities, we all have fears, we all have things in our life that could allow us to feel sorry for ourselves if we played that card. And how do we overcome that?
So I want to ask you this: when you're going through an adversity, what do you say to yourself? I mean, what's going on in your head right now today when something bad happens, when a rejection happens, an adversity happens, an injury happens? What do you say to yourself? What does that inner dialogue look like?
Well, I'll tell you that the adversity has changed radically depending on the stage of my life. And I think everybody listening can relate to that, you know, the adversity when you're in grade school is maybe not being bullied or maybe being picked for the sporting team, right? And the adversity when you're in high school and college is maybe finding love and romance. And then adversity later is your career. And I had different sets of adversity. You know, mine was, how do I navigate without fracturing a bone? How do I handle surgeries? How do I handle being stared at? But now at this age, I'm almost 40 years old, my adversity has everything to do with growing my company, building a business with my wife, making an impact on this planet. I don't think as much about the physical adversities, even though they're still present, because I have newer tools in my life to deal with the older challenges that I've dealt with my whole life. So what do I say to myself? Well, the biggest thing is I have to focus on 3 areas to feel good. Okay. And I have to avoid focusing on 3 areas to feel bad. So the way I focus my mind is I focus on what I want, what I have, and what do I like. And when you focus on what do you want, what do you have, what do you like, you start to feel optimistic. You start to feel that there's an energy coming to you. You start to see, a big why to keep going forward. But the problem most people have is they do the opposite. They focus on what they don't want, what they don't have, and what they don't like. And when you focus on what you don't want, you're just obsessed with your fears. When you're focused on what you don't have, you're obsessed with your envies. When you focus on what you don't like, you're just riddled with complaints. So a lot of dealing with adversity is just managing your focus.
So let's say
that's powerful. That's awesome.
That is good stuff.
Good.
This is like a knowledge bomb buffet here. We've got.
Give him a couple. We need a couple more.
We need another boom.
I think 3.
And then a holy cow.
Oh,
okay, there we go. Okay, now you have said that suffering is optional, and that more humans are addicted to pity than anything else on the planet. Am I getting that correct?
That is correct. I mean, anything that you are addicted to in terms of a choice or a substance you only got addicted to it because you were first addicted to pity. You first felt like, why me? How do I get out of this pain? Why does this always happen to me? This sucks. Why did I get stuck into this container, this condition, this family, this mindset, whatever it may be, right? And so I do believe that suffering is optional. I think that we all fall prey to it. I want to make it clear to the person wearing their headphones or out listening to this out and about in their day that you are susceptible, just like I am, just like all the guys on this show are susceptible to self-pity. It will come and go throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your year and your life. It's not like I carved it out and that the great Sean Stephenson, that's me mocking myself, that the great Sean Stephenson doesn't feel self-pity anymore. It's acknowledging when I'm doing it. You know, when you do it unconsciously, when you just think that that's the normal MO to being alive is to feel sorry for yourself, that's when you really get screwed. That's when you really hold yourself back versus auditing your own thoughts, your own feelings. This is why I like to journal. I'm constantly journaling out my own thoughts just so I can see them in print and think, is this what I want to keep thinking? Is this what I want to keep feeling? Is this what I want to keep focusing on?
You have said that you discovered at a very young age that when you do feel sorry for yourself, people back away from you slowly. And that when you do make light of things and have fun and make people laugh, people creep toward you. They inch toward you. They're kind of like drawn to it when you bring them good feelings. When did you discover that, and how did that truth impact your life?
Well, the memory that just popped up, because there was sometimes the things we discover them over time. And then each time we get reacquainted with it, we're like, oh, yeah, I think I got this lesson 2 years ago and I needed to get it again. Oh, I got this, right. 2 days ago and I needed to get it again. So it's not like I just found it behind the refrigerator one day. It was like a series of being reacquainted to it. But the first memory that I have today that popped up around this is when I was in high school, I had, a physical disability. I looked different. And there was this other kid who had a different physical challenge. And I remember I was a senior in high school and he was a freshman. So I was a part of a mentorship group with this young man. And his father came to me and said, would you mentor my son? He doesn't speak up. He doesn't ask for what he wants. He feels bad that he's in this wheelchair. And he looks up to you for having the confidence that you do. So I met with this kid and I said, listen, you feel like your personality is because you don't have a choice because of your disability, because you feel like people are alienating you. You feel like you are different. You're focusing on all the things that suck about having a disability. And the reason why you're looking up to me and the reason why I'm doing a lot here in school and why I'm going to go places in life is because I'm focused on all the wonderful things that this disability brings. For instance, when I roll into a room, everybody remembers me. Everybody looks at me and it burns an image into their mind because it's so radically different than what everybody else looks like. And that is gold. That makes me sticky in people's minds. And in business, we call that really good marketing. So my container, I felt like, was a genetic advantage for being memorable in people's minds. And then if I was able to, and I figured it out, if I was able to create an experience where people enjoyed being in my company, linked with being very sticky in their mind of somebody that they're not going to forget because of the novelty of what I look like, this could have a lasting impact where people want to spend time with me. They can't forget me. Years later, they're still going to remember my name. I just ran into some kid at a local sports bar. I was watching a football game, and he was like, Sean. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you remember me? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I don't. He's like, oh, I went to grade school with you. And I'm thinking, dude, you went to grade school with me. I look the same, basically, that I did in grade school. Maybe a little
now
more.
Now you're just bragging.
maybe a little more wrinkles and less hair, but you could spot me in the crowd from grade school, and just like you could now. This kid, I had no idea it was. So he mentioned his name, and I was like, oh yeah, well I remembered his name, but that's the genetic advantage to one of the many genetic advantages to this container is that it made me memorable. That stuck in people's minds. So when you create an atmosphere where people enjoy being around you, that gives you a huge advantage in life. Nobody wants to spend time with the feel sorry for me crowd. Nobody wants to spend time with the angry, bitter, the world sucks, I hate this. The only kind of people that want to spend time with that are people that are like that. The average person that wants to be positive and happy, they're going to naturally, energetically be repelled by that lower frequency attitude.
Sean, do you recommend anybody out there to cover themselves in honey to become more sticky, or is that a move you would endorse?
Is that a move?
If you then roll yourself in M&Ms, I would recommend that.
Oh, that's a good. See, Thrive Nation, you're welcome. You're welcome on that.
Now,
one.
Sean, I want to ask this because your book is very sticky. It's a book that if people have not purchased your book, Get Off Your Butt: How to End Self-Sabotage. They really do need to pick up this book. Now, this book was actually endorsed by Tony Robbins. And if somebody does a little bit of internet searching for your name, Sean Stephenson, they're going to find pictures of you with Richard Branson, you and Tony Robbins. I mean, you are like a...
We need to get our picture with him.
We need to. Where are you? What state do you live in there, Sean?
I'm in Arizona.
Arizona, wow. That's just a short hop, skip, and a plane.
Just a plane.
Now, so how did you first meet Tony Robbins? How did that relationship first start?
When I was in high school, I got asked by this guy that was where was I? I was at a conference, and this guy came up to me and said, I work with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and you have a lifelong disability. Have you ever thought about requesting a wish? And I said, well, I'm not dying. I thought those were just for dying kids. And he's like, no, it also is for people that have lifelong disabilities that are, are you under the age of 18? And I believe I was. And he said, if you could do anything, what would you do? Who would you want to meet? Where would you want to go? And I had always been drawn to Tony Robbins, watching his infomercials as a kid and thinking, man, this guy's got just such a great attitude and such a cool outlook on life. So I said, I'd like to meet Tony Robbins. And a few months later, I was hanging out one-on-one with him in a hotel in Florida after one of his events, and we became close friends, and that's kind of how all that started.
Well, let me ask this. What kind of impact has his positivity made in your life? Like, how has his mindset impacted you?
Oh, it's huge. There's only one Tony Robbins. I mean, he is the Michael Jordan of the industry. And that's why I always wanted to be the Kobe Bryant, the one that emulated.
There you
and
go.
Got within one ring of his.
Yeah.
So, Tony had a huge impact because Tony was very much the person that said that you're responsible for your reality. And if you don't like who you are, it's your responsibility to change that. If you don't like what you have, it's your responsibility to do something new with that. And he also was the biggest influence of why I became a professional speaker. It was Tony Robbins, Les Brown, and Wayne Dyer that shaped the course of my life.
Now, you have mentioned the phrase containers a few times on today's interview. And for the listeners out there who are going, what's a container? Can you break down what you mean by container?
Well, we all have a body, right? And the body is shaped differently depending on our genetic structure and what we do with it. And I call my body a container because it's something that's holding my passion, my purpose, my spirit, my attitude. I don't believe that my container defines me. I think it allows me to navigate the world, but it doesn't make up who I am, and I think a lot of people who are confined by their body, they don't like how it looks, they don't like the color of their skin or the way their body is shaped or how their voice sounds or what their hair looks like or whatever. They pick apart their appearance And yet they're forgetting it's just the container you're in this time. I look at my body as kind of like an Uber. I'm very grateful for the ride. I'm glad to be here. I don't get out of bed and think, oh, here's this disabled body again. I got to deal with this. And why didn't I get a normal body? At a young age, I did see that. I made a list of all the things that I wanted to do and experience, and none of the things that I wanted to do and experience were going to be held back because of my disability. They were going to be maybe make me have to go roundabout ways and have to get very creative. But I realized I wanted love. I wanted to be happily in a relationship with the woman of my dreams. I wanted to make money and be able to provide for myself to be independently wealthy. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted great friends. I wanted to make an impact on this planet. And nothing of those 5 things couldn't be possible just because of the container I was in. And so I've just always gone out and I've looked for what is it about my container that I love? What is it about my container that makes me unique? What is it about my container that I can appreciate today?
Paul Hood, our show sponsor here, he has a question for you. Paul, I give the mic to you.
I do. Hey, Sean.
All right,
I tell you, it's an honor to talking to you. Clay Clark, through his Thrive Time and Dr. Z, they introduced me to all kinds of people, and I, all the college. If I went to college for the rest of my life, I wouldn't gain as much knowledge and practical application as I do talking to people like you. One of the other guys he's brought in was a guy named Michael Levine. And Michael Levine says, success in life is how you play the cards you're dealt. If you're born on third base, you didn't hit a triple. So my question is how do you, as a counselor or an advisor to people, how do you not just laugh every time you talk to people when they start telling you their problems? I mean, how do you are an overcomer. I love that. No excuses. You can do anything that you want to do. So how do you have, because I think one of the biggest strengths I'm hearing is the compassion you have on other people.
That's a good question.
So how do you maintain that compassion when you just want to say, shut up?
And that's the thing. Being in my container and having my life history, I can say I have a tremendous amount of empathy for pain and empathy for challenges and struggles. And some of the concepts that I've come across in the things that I've learned, one is I believe that everybody's doing the best they can with the tools they have. Some people just have some crappy tools and they need to upgrade their tools. I also believe that if I had to have their body, their past experiences, their worldview, I would be no further along than they are. And I also believe that, by me just having that attitude of like, get over it, look what I have to go through, that's just going to put them further behind. They're going to feel worse. It's not going to inspire them. People have to come upon realizations themselves. You can't force awakening into somebody's life. You can only invite them. You can only offer them. You can only be the example to them. So a big part of why I probably exude this attitude of, hey, you're going to get it when you're going to get it, is because I've learned the alternative doesn't work. I've tried to drag people kicking and screaming into being more responsible, into being more loving, into being more successful. And you just can't. You can only be the example.
That's awesome.
I want to deep dive into your book because your book has so many knowledge bombs and we have so little time. So I want to see if I can get into some of the lessons. In your book, you break down these 6 lessons that I think the listeners can really benefit from. So we'll fire through a few of them here. Lesson 1, start connecting. What is this section of your book all about?
Well, connecting is different than communicating. Our digital devices can communicate. That's just an exchange of information. Whereas connection is an exchange of humanity. It's an exchange of emotion. And it's important that we connect with other people, that literally, and I talk about it in the book at some point, you can save someone's life sometimes by just asking them how their day is and smiling and telling them you appreciate the time that you got with them, because it can change the trajectory of their decisions. They can feel like somebody saw them, that they were seen and observed and cared for, and the ripple effect of that is pretty amazing. Connecting is about getting to know the other person, because it's easy, and I get into this trap too. It's easy to just want to talk about yourself. It's easy because that's your wheelhouse. Like, you know what you think, you know what you've done, you know what you've experienced, and it's sometimes scary to get into an interaction with another human being and not talk about yourself. But I strongly recommend that connecting, in order to connect, you make sure that you're equally requesting information about their life as much as you are sharing information about your life. Another thing that I found when it comes to connecting is don't act like you know what somebody else is going through. I don't think that works. When you tell somebody, oh, I know what you're going through. Like, let's say you're at a funeral and somebody's dad just died, and you say, I know what you're going through. My dad died when I was 10. And you think you're helping that person. But I've pulled a lot of people in those scenarios and asked questions, and that's not what makes people feel good. What makes people feel good is asking them, how are you dealing with this? What are you feeling? Tell me everything. What are some of the things that are coming through your head right now? And then offering, when I was younger, my dad died, and it sucked. And I don't know what emotions you might be going through, but here's how I dealt with mine. And you can achieve so much more by doing some excavation, doing some investigation work, and getting to know their reality before you ever share yours.
You, in your book, Lesson 5, you talk about choosing your friends wisely. You write, choose your friends wisely. I'd love for you to break down what you mean by this and why this is so important.
So studies have proven over and over that there's a lot of conditions in our life that influence our level of success, our level of happiness, or our income, so many different attributes. But the biggest is who you hang out with, your friend base. And the reason why that is your friend base has influence over you. Whether you like it or not, you become like those you surround yourself with. And when you're having a bad day and you're contemplating doing something stupid or contemplating doing something harmful or being negative, and you share that with somebody in your peer group, if they say, yeah, it's probably a good idea. You probably should do that dumb
Burn
thing.
it down. Burn it down. Absolutely. Burn it down.
Here's
That's
some
not
matches.
It's not a good thing.
Versus them saying, hey, come on now. You're going through a tough time right now. Let me remind you who you are, remind you what you've done, let me remind you why you got started in this fill in the blank business, family, relationship in the first place. And like that is a positive, empowering example for you. They're going to lift you up. And I'm convinced that if you continue to get into dirty water, you'll never come out clean. And that's why our friends have such influence, because when we're having a bad day, we turn to our friends, and our friends unconsciously are influencing us. That's why anytime I want to improve an area of my life, I will turn to the friends in that area of my life that have better understanding and success and results with that, and I'll spend more time with those people. If I need to get in better shape, I turn to the friends that are in great shape. And ideally, I want all my friends to take their health seriously. If I want to learn more about investing and creating wealth, I turn to the friends that really have that area dialed in. And you become like those you surround yourself with. That's why you have to be very careful who you let into your life. I'm convinced, and this might sound a bit extreme, but one negative person in your life can derail your destiny.
Oof.
One negative person.
Wait a second. I want Sean to restate that. This is powerful. Sean, can you restate that one more time?
Sure. That when you are around these people, if you have one person that is negative, that is putting garbage and toxicity into your brain and that you are exposing yourself to, they can totally derail your destiny. You could totally miss the mark for why you were put here.
That is not only do I think that statement, although people may perceive it as to be controversial, I think that right there is the number one situation plaguing anybody out there listening to today's show who's not getting success. It's because you're surrounding yourself with idiots, or you are plaguing someone in your life by being an idiot.
Yeah, but yeah, typically.
I know there's been times in my life where I was the idiot. I'm like, is it cool if I pee in the pool, guys? Is it cool? I mean, you know what I mean? Just a little bit of pee in the pool. I mean, it's going to be a figurative idea.
It's a big pool.
You know what I mean? No, it's just, there's people. I remember in college, Z, I hung out with guys who literally would talk about the gas stations that you could steal gas from where you wouldn't get busted. Like it was some kind of life hack.
Yeah.
Okay, Z, now you have a question for Sean here.
Sean, wow, what a fascinating story.
Yes.
What an inspiring story. And it just goes to show you that no matter what container you have, the sky's the limit, right? I'm kind of curious as to a couple questions, actually. But if you could go back in time, this is one of my favorite questions.
If you could turn back time,
and talk to yourself, say when you're 39 now, so let's go back 20 years and you're 19. What would you walked in the room and there you are, and you could walk up to yourself and tell you whatever you wanted to say. Self, let me tell you something. What would you say to yourself?
I would say, don't go to that fraternity party when you turn 21.
I think we all would say that.
There we go. That's the best answer I've gotten so far. I love it.
Now,
wait. The other thing too is, what was the lowest point in your life, and how did you dig out of that hole?
It was 2017.
Wow. Recent. Yeah.
And I went through a business challenge with a business partner of mine, and we had been working together for a very long time. And I realized that it was time for me to go my own way. And I knew it was going to be really hard for them, for this person. And breaking off, it was a business divorce. And if you've ever gotten any kind of divorce, whether it's business or a relationship, it's painful. You have to split everything up, and there's hurt feelings, and you feel like this jerk, and then it becomes, you can get into a battle, and then it did. It went the legal direction, and next thing I know, it was involved in a lawsuit, and it was so hard and painful, and yet, I will say I have never grown as a man emotionally and spiritually as deep and as accelerated as I did during that period in my life.
That's awesome.
Sean, I have two final questions for you. I want to respect your time. Two final questions for you. And I hate two-part questions because it's kind of hard to – it'd be hard for me to answer two questions, so I'm going to go one at a time here. Question number one, is there a book out there outside of your book, in addition to your book, is there a book out there that you'd say, Mr. Entrepreneur, Mrs. Potential Entrepreneur, someone listening, this is the one book, in addition to my book, that I think that you should read? Is there one book that you say, that book really changed my life, and every entrepreneur out there should definitely check this book out?
Yeah, I would say The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, because that's a book that I could reread every year and still get value from. It's about the creative resistance that rises up, that stops us from playing big, the creative resistance that rises up from facing rejection and building out areas of our life that we know we're capable of, but we're going to face some challenging, darker times maybe, but going through it anyway. That book had a huge impact on my life.
Now, Andrew, for accountability, right now while we're on this show, I'd like you to purchase a copy of Sean's book, Get Off Your Butt, How to End Self-Sabotage and Stand Up for Yourself, so I can add it to my collection, so I can check. I want to make sure we buy this book. We own this book. He's going to buy it, Sean, while we're still on the Today Show. And see, I know a lot of our listeners are going to do it too.
Well, why wouldn't they?
Well, a lot of people say,
get off your butt.
What people are saying, I want to do it, but I have carpal tunnel syndrome. But I'll click. I'll go ahead. I'll push through the pain. Push through the pain.
Push through the pain.
Push through the pain. Buy the book. Everybody out there,
We got a thumb up. We got a thumb up. We got a thumb up.
Confirm purchase.
Thank you. Your order has been placed.
Now leave a confirmed Amazon review explaining what a great mentor this guy's been to our listening audience, okay?
Got it.
Make sure that happens. Okay. Now, final question I have for you is, how do you organize, how do you structure the first 4 hours of a typical day in your life? I think it's so important that we start a day off successfully. We plan our day. Everybody we've interviewed who is intentional about their life seems to have a routine or a plan. How do you organize the first 4 hours of your day, and what time do you wake up?
All right, so I have something. I don't know. You can tell me if it's appropriate to share with your audience, but I have a gift on this topic for your listeners. Can I share it?
Yeah, sure. Share it. Yeah.
Okay. So I would recommend they go to theunstoppableformula.com. Theunstoppableformula.com.
Go in there right now.
I have a course that I put together that everybody that's listening right now, they can get absolutely free of charge. And it is a breakdown of what that day looks like. How do I put it together? And specifically, what are you going to need to implement in your life so that you are unstoppable with your schedule and your purpose and your environment? Because those are the three basic areas of life: is self-care, life purpose, and empowering environment. And I break all that down in detail at theunstoppableformula.com. But I can just tell you right now, I go through phases with my my bedtime and wake time. Sometimes I've gone through more like seasons. Sometimes I like getting up at 5 a.m. and just getting so much done before the day begins. And then there are other times where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit more self-care based and get a little extra sleep, and I might sleep until 9 o'clock in the morning. So I don't agree with the mentality that the time of day determines your success. I think it's more about the ritual that you stick to. I'm a big believer that in this entrepreneurial hustle game world that is being constantly pumped and promoted, the mentality of I'll sleep when I die is actually killing people. And it's accelerating the process.
Z, you own a diagnostic sleep center. How many hours do you think the average listener should be sleeping per day?
It depends on their age, but 8 hours is a good target.
8 hours?
The younger you are, the more you need. An infant sleeps much more than that, and the older you are,
like when you're 90, can you sleep for like an hour?
Yeah, because you don't have many shopping days left to Christmas, so you want to shop as much as you can. So yeah,
okay.
No, the older you get, it's actually the less sleep you need technically. But I mean, 8 is a good target. And for people that come up to me and say, "I want to sleep like 3 hours. That's all I need is 3 hours a day." I go, "You're killing yourself. You are technically. I mean, that's
and that's the challenge is. A lot of people learn how to prop themselves up with caffeine and then put themselves to sleep with wine at night. And you're living in a trance. You're not fully present. You're not fully clear and sharp. And that's why, I have a set of rituals. I explain it at theunstoppableformula.com. And one of the rituals is consistent, restful sleep, because I know if I'm not getting that, I'm not good to anyone. My activity, productivity, it plummets, and my overall quality of life, it messes with your brain chemistry. And I like to set my brain chemistry up to win. We live in a generation where everybody thinks that that I need to take some kind of pill in order to influence my brain chemistry. And yeah, there are times where that's necessary, but oftentimes it's how you are living your life. It's your rituals, it's your mindset, it's who you're hanging out with.
Sean, we like to end every show here with a boom, which stands for big, overwhelming, optimistic momentum. So essentially, Z, let's kind of role play real quick here. We would say 3, 2, 1, boom.
And then actually physically say a boom.
We would physically say the boom. Are you prepared to physically bring the boom, Mr. Sean?
Oh, always.
Paul Hood, are you ready to bring the boom?
I am.
Andrew, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Dr. Z, are you ready?
I might even pre-boom.
Unmiked John, are you ready to bring the boom? Okay, here we go. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom!
Attend the world's best business workshop led by America's #1 business coach for free by subscribing on iTunes and leaving us an objective review. Claim your tickets by emailing us proof that you did it and your contact information to info@thrivetimeshow.com.